on how the development, sorry, I'm just going to clear that notification, how the development has assessed its baseline and taken steps to avoid impacts in the first place, what it's proposing for after the development, and then a host of other information, including off-site gains which are registered, credits purchased, and a few other details surrounding the development. So basically, we want this to be the document that, alongside the metric and the completed calculator for that, gives you, as a planning authority, everything you need to know about whether or not to approve this biodiversity gain proposal. Why we need it? Well, actually, I'll reframe that slightly to why we need a template for it. And in case you haven't found it yet, and I wouldn't blame if you haven't, it's on page 99, Annex B of the current consultation document. We're proposing that we have a template for this document rather than leaving it to kind of free-form reporting. Partly because we know that at the moment ecological reporting is very varied in its structure, format, and everything else, and that can add to the burdens of reviewing proposals, and it can make it quite difficult to work out whether certain bits of information have or haven't been included. And so the idea is that if we produce this template, which hopefully will be the right balance between kind of setting out the right prescription, so the right information is included but not overly restrictive, so that we're just getting the kind of core details and you're missing out on the nice details around the edge. The idea is that you'll be able to see at a glance whether or not the right information has been included for this biodiversity net gain. And if you're interested in a particular bit of information, for example, the offsite registered gains, you'll be really familiar with the format of the template. You know exactly which bit to scroll to. Ecology itself, rather than so much on the format and the document. Who's going to complete it? It's going to be submitted to the planning authority, and we expect that it's normally going to be completed by an ecologist on behalf of the developer. Could in some cases be completed by the developer themselves. We're not putting in any particular restrictions on who has to submit that, but it does have to be approved by the planning authority. And the legislation in the Environment Act basically says the planning authority must approve the biodiversity gain plan if it meets the tests set out and if it does show that the biodiversity net gain is going to be achieved. And then the last point, when the biodiversity gain plan will be submitted, because net gain is framed in the Environment Act as a pre-commencement condition, strictly speaking, the biodiversity gain plan doesn't have to be submitted alongside the planning application. A developer could leave it until the very last minute after the plans have been fully approved to submit their biodiversity gain plan and have it approved. We realise that if it's done in that way, does create issues because there's going to be lots of information that you want to know and consider at the actual point of planning application determination. So we've said in the consultation that we want some biodiversity gain information to add to the jargon handbook of net gain is essentially a shorter form of the biodiversity gain plan. So it'll make sure that you have at least some of the information in the biodiversity gain plan that should be submitted alongside the planning application, rather than being left until any later in the process. And the idea is that then that gives consultees the information on the sort of outline proposals for net gain, and it also allows you to take these proposals into account in the determination of the application, as well as just whether or not to approve the game plan. I will stop there because I think we're about to hit time for this section on the agenda. I don't know, Becky, are we doing questions on that now, or are we going straight into the document itself?
Wait a minute, yeah, I'm doing really well this morning. Okay, yes, we've got a discussion session now, so but I think maybe any questions on that to start with. So if anyone's got any questions, if you want to either raise your hand or just bung your question in the chat. Otherwise, we've got a bit of a discussion around sort of what happens now, what works for you. So has anyone got any questions about what Max has said? I can't see any hands up. I'll just wait a minute for people to absorb it and get their head around things.
Hi, Becky. Not a question, but
yeah,
just worth pointing out that this is very much, so the version that's been included in the condoc is very much a draft version. Wanted to get people's views early on, and then we're planning to put out a better version, an improved version before biodiversity net gain becomes mandatory, so after a period of testing.